Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin. That's Frank Agin, A-G-I-N, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. I pronounced my name twice and I spelled it, and the reason for that is kind of be cute. This whole episode has to do with, or I should say try to be cute. This whole episode has to do with name pronunciations. The story I often share about name pronunciations when I was graduating from law school, just a little backstory. Law school is a 3-year program. Last name, again, A-G-I-N. There was an individual in the class who was named Adams, and so he was going to be graduating or be introduced ahead of me. And so I was second to be introduced in my law school graduating class. And mind you, law school is kind of akin to a medium-sized high school. I think our graduating class in law school was a couple hundred people. So it's not like a university that's graduating thousands and thousands of kids. Even some small colleges will graduate 400 or 500 kids every year. This is relatively small. There's not a lot of kids, and so there's not a lot of names to focus on. I'm number 2, had no problem with Adams, and it came to me, and the dean, who is somebody I had interactions with, introduced me as Frank Agin. Mispronounced the name. It's Agin, hard G. And I've heard all sorts of different iterations of my last name. I've heard Agin being pronounced correct. I've heard Agin. I've heard again, and it's not spelled again. And I generally go with the flow with respect to those sorts of things. But it's that moment in time, and again, I'm not upset about it, although I do remember it. That moment in time really underscored for me the importance of pronouncing people's names and trying to make sure that you pronounce people's names correctly. You may not do it successfully, but you've got to certainly try. So today I want to talk about an article I stumbled across, and the title of the article is, "Have You Mispronounced Someone's Name? Here's What to Do Next." And the article was actually found online. It's ideas.ted.com. And the article was written by a gentleman by the name of Gerardo Ochoa. Now, I want to spell Gerardo's name. It's G-E-R-A-R-D-O. And let's just focus on his first name for right now. Ochoa is spelled O-C-H-O-A. I think I got that correctly. I know I've got Gerardo correctly. I hope I've got it correct. I may be wrong, but he phonetically spelled out the phonetical pronunciation of it within his article, and there's a reason for that. But Gerardo, and again, it starts with a G, but it's Gerardo. When Gerardo was in 5th grade, he and his family had immigrated from Mexico and relocated to a small town east of Portland, Oregon, that is. There's 2 Portlands, Portland, Maine, Portland, Oregon. And so they had relocated, and he was 9 years old, and he was starting the 5th grade, and the teacher was going through and doing roll call, and when she got to his name, seeing that it was G-E-R-A-R-D-O, she naturally assumed that, well, I don't know what she assumed, but she, in going through the roll call, she called out Jerry, called him Jerry, assuming that, and again, I don't know what she assumed, but something was going on in her mind. Didn't know exactly how to pronounce this name. Didn't ask, but just made an assumption. This was this person's name, and they were really going to they really went by Jerry. They went by some shortened form of it. And so he was Jerry at that moment. And he didn't, being a 9-year-old, he's not going to correct a teacher. His parents had always instilled in him, you respect your elders, and so he wasn't going to go against this teacher, and he just allowed himself to become Jerry when his name was not Jerry. The problem was that he didn't correct anybody, and so this just took on a life of its own. People started to call him Jerry, And as he says in the article, it was like an out-of-control wildfire that spread too far, too fast for me to stop it. He essentially had to accept his new name. And it certainly upset him internally because at home, he was not Jerry. He was Hirudo. And when he says it spread like wildfire, he meant it because Jerry was in the yearbook. It was in his school ID, on his school ID. It was in the local newspaper. It's not that he didn't like the name Jerry. It just wasn't his name. Agin is not a bad word, but it's not Agin. And so I get where he's coming from. I get where he's coming from. And so what he does in this article, which I thought was kind of interesting and cute and something we can all learn from, is he goes through and he kind of categorizes, and he draws on research from somebody else or somebody else's insights, but he kind of categorizes people and how they deal with names that are difficult to pronounce. And America is the great melting pot. It just is, and it always will be. And it's a challenge enough to remember people's names, but in America, where you have people who are coming from Latin American countries, and we have people who are coming from the Far East, and we have people coming from the Middle East, and we have people immigrating from Europe, and it's the great melting pot. It's not like being in, say, Japan, where 99% of the people are of Japanese descent. So we have an added challenge here, and it's a challenge that as Americans we just simply need to embrace. And certainly as good networkers we need to embrace it because, again, people's names are important, and we need to take the time to make sure that we say them correctly to the extent we can, to really kind of work on it. And Hirudo, if you're listening to this, or if somebody feels that I'm misspelling the name, fine, correct me. Please correct me. I did the best I could. I looked at how he had phonetically spelled it, and I've worked on it, but I still may not have it right. I don't know. At any rate, in his article, Hirudo mentioned that at one point he took back his name. He stopped trying to be Jerry and assert himself as Hirudo. And over the years, he says he heard thousands of variations of his names, and that's probably not an exaggeration. Think about all the other students that we've encountered, us, and his life would likely mimic ours. All the students, all the teachers, employers, people he's met at networking events, friends. The list would go on and on and on. So thousands of people having to deal with this name. He's run across many, and he's always thought on it. He did some research on it, and he stumbled across an educator and podcaster by the name of Jennifer Gonzalez. And he indicates that Jennifer's done a fantastic job of kind of categorizing the mispronouncers. And so the first type of mispronouncer is the fumble muddler. When I meet a fumble muddler and introduce myself, they typically get nervous. They attempt to say my name, struggle a bit in the process, and may giggle. They usually settle for some sort of close approximation of my name. Now, Hirudo goes on to say, I don't have a problem with fumble muddlers. They try. They may not get it right, but they're trying. They know that names matter, but they're trying. The second is what is termed, this is Jennifer Gonzalez's term, the arrogant mangler. And again, I'll quote, when I meet a mangler, I know right away what kind of a relationship we're going to have, and it's usually not a good one. When I introduce myself, the arrogant mangler will respond with Geraldo, and then they'll go on and say, it's great to meet you, blah, 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 and continue to talk, totally oblivious to the fact that they may have mispronounced the name. In other words, they're just so caught up in what they're doing, and they don't care, they don't respect, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them that Hirudo's name is not Geraldo. Now, I can see where he would have issues with this. I would have issues with this. Now, Frank is a relatively easy name to say. Agin is somewhat challenging, but not crazy difficult. It might be Agin. That's not so far from Agin or Agin. Again, close, but when you're looking at somebody's name and you're so far off and you just kind of blow through it, I think that certainly is an indication that the person's basically saying, I don't care. This is what I'm going to call you. I don't care. And it doesn't matter. So just rolling on, and why you be tipped off that wouldn't be a good relationship long term. And I always hate to judge things on an initial initial meeting. But that would be an indication that there are some other things that there's some self-centeredness going on with respect to that particular person. The third category is what he calls the calibrator. And I'll quote, "These are my favorite group of mispronouncers. The calibrator will listen to my name, they'll slow down, read my lips, and attempt to say it. They may get it wrong, but then try again and again until they get it. Sometimes they'll come back to me the next day or week to ensure they've got it right. If you struggle to pronounce someone's name, always strive to be a calibrator." Now, if I have to be honest, I'm going to say that I am a fumble muddler more than anything. I want to strive to be a better calibrator, and I will after reading this article and kind of taking in what I'm pushing out, taking my own medicine. I'm not an arrogant mangler. I don't intend to be an arrogant mangler. Yes, I've gotten names wrong, and I felt bad about it, but I just don't blow through it as if it doesn't matter because it. Hirdo adds a fourth category to the list. He calls this the evader. And to be honest, I've been an evader. Now, I'll quote here again. "These are the people who'd rather call me something different than call me by my name or look silly trying to pronounce it. When I introduce myself, they say things like, 'Do you have a nickname?' or I'm never going to be able to say that. Or can I just call you G or Jerry?" I guess upon reflection, that's not me. Again, I'm back to the fumble muddler is who I am. But when I hear of evader, what comes to my mind are people who can't remember your name, and so they're going to call you buddy. And you kind of get a sense when people can't remember your name. But when you're not able to pronounce somebody's name, that may be another reason. But here is kind of an active evasion. A passive evasion is okay, I'm just not going to say it. I'm not going to say Hirdo's name. I'm just going to call him whatever. Use pronouns to the extent I can, but avoid trying to say his name. The active evader is somebody who's trying to find the easy way out. But as Hirdo indicates in here, is that we all should strive to be calibrators. And he goes on and he talks about that sometimes mispronouncing can cost money. And he uses in his article the example of Stephen Curry. Stephen Curry plays for the Golden State Warriors, and he actually switched sneaker sponsors, going from Nike to Under Armour, and according to ESPN, an ESPN article, which quoted his father's, Stefan's father, and most people know him as Steph Curry, but it's Stephen. During Nike's marketing pitch, a couple of the executives referred to Stephen as Stefan instead of E-N-O-N, which I don't know if it's true or not, but made him feel disrespected enough that he was going to switch sponsors, which I don't know what that costs Nike, but there are implications to these things. There certainly are implications to these things. Obviously, if you're an arrogant mangler, that's going to hurt you, as opposed to if you're a calibrator or a fumble muddler. But he goes on in the article to kind of give some quick tips. Give some quick tips as how we can be better at mispronunciation. And again, America's the great melting pot. We're going to run into this more and more and more. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. There was a time in this country that everybody in this country was from England. And then people from Germany came over and we intermixed, and then Italy and we intermixed, and Poland and we intermixed, and they all had variations to their names, and we've dealt with it, and we'll deal with this. But we need to kind of take it head on. But here are some tips that he gives to help navigate the area. First, be humble. Admit that you're having difficulty with a name. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to explore. I think in fact, I think it's a good thing because it sends that powerful message that their name is important. The other thing is be an active bystander. If you see somebody struggling with a name, jump in. Or if you see somebody even behind the scenes talking about somebody, hey, Geraldo is a really neat guy. Well, in that situation, you can jump in and say, no, it's not Geraldo. It's Hirdo. There's no L in there. And so that kind of helps that person. And I've been in those situations where people have corrected me or I've corrected others, and it's really for me, it's a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank God I didn't make an idiot of myself. And other people have kind of the same way. Everybody wants to do the right thing, or most people want to do the right thing. And then the last tip he gives is don't change somebody's name because you can't pronounce it. If you can't pronounce somebody's name, that's not their problem. That's your problem. You just need to work harder and harder and harder to get it right. Be that calibrator. At worst, a fumble muddler. But don't be the arrogant mangler. You're just going to blow through it. Don't be the evader that you want to kind of change it to make it easier. Just take your time and know that their name is important, and you need to take the time to try and pronounce it correctly. Finally, to wrap up, remember AmSpirit Business Connections. We have a unique franchise opportunity that involves helping small businesses, professionals, entrepreneurs become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours in the morning, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for someone to add on to a business or profession they already have. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. They're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, consultants, various types of entrepreneurs, and they add that on to what they're already doing. So if this is something you would like to learn more about, contact me using the email at the end of the podcast or the one I include in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.